Hi, I'm Kim. You're watching Kim Wilson TV. My channel is dedicated to helping victims of narcissistic abuse get free and stay free. I've received a lot of emails from friends here at the channel who feel kind of embarrassed, really remorseful, quite shamed by the fact they acted crazy during the relationship. Well, I'm going to let you know I acted pretty crazy too, and I want to talk about that today. Many of us have expressed a feeling like we've been changed as a result of the relationship. But I'm going to suggest that the change didn't come once the relationship ended and we began exploring narcissism and discovering what it was exactly that we'd been through. I believe the change in us began in the relationship long before we left, during periods of extreme abuse, during periods of extreme gaslighting and projection, and that horrendous feeling like you're being diminished, that your identity is being taken from you, that everything you believed yourself to be is just slipping away. And that change, though maybe it happened slowly, I absolutely would say for me that the change in me began long before I left. I was definitely becoming something I had never been before. I was afraid. I was genuinely fearful, almost a heightened sense of terror most of the time. I was no longer feeling confident in my personal abilities, not as a mother, not as a partner, not as an artist, not as an employee, not as a person. So I was shifting from being a fairly confident person to being quite a frightened person, and this was something I was very uncomfortable with. I was no longer sure of my thoughts. I was questioning all of my thoughts. I was really becoming a shell of the person I had been. I think part of the confidence that I felt throughout my lifetime is the fact that I'd always been fairly successful. Now, with that said, I stuck to my areas of expertise. I wasn't venturing off into other people's area of expertise. So as, I remained in my own area of expertise, of course, I could find successes there, and that was confidence building. I had been a good homemaker. I'd always created comfortable, nurturing, loving homes for my family. And, all of it was just falling apart. I couldn't put a plant in the right position in Trevor's house anymore, this house of pain. I couldn't hang a picture in the right place. The choice of draperies that I made was, wrong. Everything that I did was wrong. I'd always been regarded as a very good cook, where all of a sudden now, I couldn't bake a potato right. Shortcomings in my career, just everything, every single thing about my life was coming unglued. I was constantly being ridiculed for all my failures. And there were times at night when I would think to myself, what the hell's going on? I've never seen, so many failures in my life. I've never experienced so many obstacles in my life. How could I have been a successful person? And I don't mean I was CEO of a big corporation. I mean, I was the CEO of my own life, and I managed my own life very well and was very happy with that. But all of a sudden, nothing worked. Nothing could come together anymore. As hard as I tried, nothing was working for me. Just faced with failure after failure after failure, I was definitely becoming someone different, someone I didn't recognize. But in addition to that, I was picking up really, really bad character traits. I was angry. I had reached a point where the constant bombardment of assaults were now being met with my anger and my rage, where prior to that, I would just kind of slither away, go to the bedroom, cry, lock myself in the bathroom, cry in the shower, where now crying had just proven futile. It just was serving no purpose. And now I was becoming angry, and I was definitely acting out in a way that would indicate I was coming unglued. I had reached a point with the abuse where he would call me a horrible name, not wanting to be abusive myself back. I'd reached a point where, his insults were now being met with insults coming from me. And I really didn't like this aspect of what I was becoming. He was breaking and stealing my personal possessions, my private property. It got to the point where I was actually contemplating breaking his things. And this is just not a behavior that I was happy with at all. Fortunately, I was able to restrain myself. But, in retrospect, sometimes I think to myself, God, why didn't I? I was starting to develop really negative and vengeful sort of mindsets, like thoughts of, revenge. I've heard from a lot of you who were cheated on. The infidelity had become such that you could no longer handle it and had yourself acted out in sexual ways that made you feel really shameful about your behavior. And I guess that is all part of the whole concept that abuse truly does change people and causes us to act outside of what we're comfortable with or what comes to us naturally. When someone is being driven to the point that they're now acting so outside of their self that they barely recognize their self anymore, who's to blame? Well, I'm going to say it's not you. It's not me. It's not us, period. It is the source of the evil. It is the source of the abuse. For an empath, they're going to see these behaviors as being that of their own, and they're going to want to immediately assume responsibility. Really take a look at this as now a defect in their character that they want to grow beyond and improve on. But I found myself in a situation where, removed from the abuse, I no longer felt vengeful. I no longer feel crazy. Certainly, I'm angry that any of this had to happen to me, but it did happen, and there's really nothing I can do to change it at this point. Where I've got control of the situation now is I'm done. That's it. The abuse is over, and that I do have control over. The narcissists create an environment where they very intentionally made you feel crazy. So the fact that you acted crazy really doesn't seem unusual. Should we feel guilt or shame for behaviors that were seemingly beyond our control? I think it kind of comes down to that saying, like, when in Rome, act like the Romans. I mean, you're in an environment that is hostile, that is abusive, that's, full of rage and screaming and sneaky, malicious, horrible behavior. And next thing you know, you're caught up in it and you're behaving in the same way that you're being treated. And now you're free and you're looking back going, holy shit, what was I thinking? Well, you weren't. None of us were. Everything the narcissist does is accidental. Everything's quite intentional. And I do believe we became the product of an environment that was created despite our best desire to have a normal life. I raised 5 sons on my own, with the help of my mother, and never once, my oldest boy is 30 years old, never once did I smack a child, never once. I spent my entire life really seeing the danger and harm in violent behavior, and next thing you know, I was truly wanting to punch him in his head. Was actually daydreaming about running him over with the truck that he'd stuck me, with the bill for. For someone who had never had any violent or aggressive thoughts towards my fellow man, I all of a sudden found myself consumed by thoughts of violence towards him. I felt really shamed and really humiliated by these thoughts of outward aggression towards someone that I perceived as being sick. Have, however, been able to free myself from those really shameful feelings because I didn't really need to look in to understand it because it wasn't in me. It was actually outside of me. It was a product of an environment that I had not created. I have since let go of any shame associated with behaviors that were beyond my control. I hope you guys are having a great narc-free day.